All right, everyone, welcome back to the Old Republic Podcast Travel Logs. Today we are on our way to our next destination of Korriban. So, Cassia, we are kicking off the new year. It's a new year and is a new location for the crew of the Ebon Hawk.
Yeah, first episode we're recording for 2023, so Korriban is exciting, and we hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in our last travel log, we were in Dantooine. We revisited the Jedi Temple. We picked up Mikal. We had a lot of fun, planning some wartime strategies for the people there. But, it's time for this journey to take a bit of a darker tone, and we are headed in to Korriban, the heart of the Sith Empire. And it's a place that we've been before, right, Cassia?
Yeah, we visited Korriban in the first Knights of the Old Republic, and funny story, there were people there in Knights of the Old Republic 1, and this time around it's kind of empty.
That's right. Yeah, it's a very much kind of the flip side of the coin of Dantooine, right? So in the first game we go there, Dantooine is full of Jedi. It's kind of this bustling Jedi enclave sort of a thing, and that's been destroyed and abandoned. And now we're going to Korriban, same kind of thing. So you had the Sith Academy there, the Valley of the Sith Lords, and that's all been, kind of abandoned and let go into ruins. So it's kind of, like I said, kind of the flip side of this same coin as we go from the light side over here to the dark side. But what about Korriban? Have we seen Korriban and anything else in Star Wars other than Knights of the Old Republic?
Well, wasn't it called Moribund in Star Wars Season 6, The Clone Wars, and Yoda visits there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so in its current iteration, I guess, it's referred to as Moriband. I don't know, you'll have to let us know out there if you're listening to this, if there was ever any reasoning given for the name change, or if we're just meant to assume that it's just ancient location, ancient civilization, that name just gets changed over the course of history. But if there was a specific mention as to why the name changed, I would love to know about it. But yeah, it's called Moriband in the kind of current up-to-date bit of, canon Star Wars that we have. And Yoda went there on like his fever dream kind of thing that he went on and talked to Darth Bane about setting up the rule of two, right?
Yeah, I think that George Lucas said he liked the sound of Moriband better, and maybe it kind of sounds like the word moribund, which I'm just looking up the definition. Approaching death, about to die, on the verge of becoming obsolete, in a dying state, dying at the point of death, and maybe it just kind of means that the dark side doesn't lead to a fruitful life, and you don't really get to, like, what Sith are so afraid of is death, and they can't live on after they die.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good kind of parallel and description for both the Valley of the Sith Lords and how we see it kind of in the state of Korriban as we get into Knights of the Old Republic 2 here. So as you mentioned, it was in Clone Wars Yoda went there, but it's also been mentioned in the High Republic, in the Galaxy's Edge comic series, in the Empire Strikes Back Certain Point of View book, and in Myths and Fables. So Korriban, or Moriband as it's referred to now, has gotten a lot of kind of mentions and things, and it seems pretty important. And I would like to think, we'll find out later this year, hopefully, but maybe Moriband is a place of interest to the setting of the Acolyte. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
So as far as Korriban goes, 110% canon, as always, as we go through those. And like I mentioned, we got here after coming from Dantooine, and it is time to kind of face our past, our Sith-like past. We're going to meet up against a foe, and have some dialogue bits with Kreia that are going to play with your head a little bit. But who do we meet here in Korriban? You mentioned that there isn't anyone here, but we do still, we meet a foe, and we kind of meet, some ghosts from our past.
I really remember the ghost sections. You get to see a kind of a younger Darth Malak in visions, and you get to see a younger Bastila Shan, even though she didn't literally join Darth Malak, in Revan's cause. I guess, like, you see her in the vision kind of join their side.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's right. Through the Chirac caves there, you have the kind of ghosts from our past. Yeah, you mentioned Malak and Bastila, but there's a ghost of a Republic captain who kind of follows us through the battle and to their death. We face off against Kreia in the Chirac caves, and that's where you get that great line, apathy is death, where, kind of all of our companions are, joining her side, and we're standing there to kind of confront that. And then ultimately we face off against the ghost of Darth Revan in this burial chamber, which kind of leads me to believe, if you're meant to think, maybe, because no one knows what happens to Revan, is that, in Mitra Surik's mind, is this where Darth Revan, ultimately came to be buried, as you kind of face off against your past. But yeah, the Chirac Cave section is really interesting. One of the things that I think is interesting about it is you don't even have to go through the Chirac Cave. Like, it's not an integral part of the game. Like, you can play through the game without ever going through there, but the story bits of it are really important, I think, to the character of Mitra Surik, especially in this Korriban section.
Yeah, it's a fascinating and, I don't know, kind of understated section, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So it's not all just ghosts from our past. It's ghosts from the way distant past. So when we first kind of get to Korriban, we're going through the Valley of the Sith Lords, and all of these ruins are kind of in crumbles and disrepair, have fallen down and collapsed. Very different to what we see in the first Knights of the Old Republic game. But we do get a little bit of information. We actually kind of go through, and if you go up to each of the temples, the voice of Kreia comes into your head and tells you who we're meeting there, right?
This was the tomb of Tulak Hord, known as the greatest lightsaber duelist of the Sith Lords. Ahead lies the tomb of Naga Sadow, successor to Marka Ragnos, and the Sith Lord responsible for nearly conquering the Republic in the Great Hyperspace War a millennia ago. Before you is the tomb of the great Sith Lord Marka Ragnos, a half-breed who possessed tremendous strength, both physically and in the Force. This way leads to the tomb of Ajunta Paul, a fierce Sith Lord. According to legend, the blade proved more fearsome than the master, leading to his demise.
So I think it's fun to kind of, just get these little glimpses. And so if you kind of came into, I guess, KOTOR 2 fresh, you're still getting a little refresher on who these people were, because in the first game you actually get to go into these tombs and learn more about these Sith Lords. But it's just kind of, I don't know, kind of like a little appendices, I guess, for you. Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you kind of get some history and some Indiana Jones vibes, so just having the tombs there.
Yeah, absolutely. But, it's not all tombs and caves in Korriban. There is the Sith Academy there, which we get to go in and explore. Now, in the first game, we go in and we become a Sith recruit, and there's a lot of people running around. This time, this place has been cleared out. There's not a lot going on. Everyone there has come to their demise, including Master Lana Vash, who was in a prison cell there in the Korriban Academy. But unfortunately, rest in peace, Master Vash. So that's that. That was the last of the Jedi Masters that we were looking for, of the Masters that had outcast us from the Jedi Order. So,
yeah, that's the standard version. In the restored content version, you do get to meet Master Vash, I believe, on the planet where all the HK droids are coming from.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Master Vash was supposed to be the Jedi that we meet. Actually, Master Vash and her Padawan on that planet that got cut from the game completely. It's called M478, I think,
Yeah.
is the name of the planet. So that's kind of interesting that, you know, in the time crunch to get KOTOR 2 out, they kind of reused that character and used it as kind of a plot point to kind of steer you in the direction of, you know, getting through this Sith temple and, you know, out into the caves and carrying on with your mission.
Yeah.
And that leaves us with one more kind of important character that we have an encounter with here in Korriban. And I think that it's really important both in terms of Mitra Surik's story and the story of this character, but that is none other than Darth Sion, the Lord of Pain. We are back confronted with them again.
Yeah, and he's always kind of there when you kind of least expect it. So he's creepy.
He is creepy, yeah. I put in my notes here that he is a Sith zombie lord because Darth Sion has died, but he is so mad about it he just refuses to die and uses his death and his pain to keep him alive, which is pretty creepy. But Darth Sion, I think, is kind of an interesting character. I find Sion to be probably the most interesting of the villains kind of here in this game. I find him a lot more interesting than Darth Nihilus myself, personally. But this is kind of our first encounter with him since we meet him at the very beginning of the game in the Harbinger.
Yeah. In a way, he kind of reminds me of the Phantom of the Opera. He kind of has a kind of an obsession for the Jedi exile, and he's kind of always there, and he never dies until he does.
He can never die until he does. Yeah, because he just holds in that hatred, right? And that's kind of one of the things that we learn about Darth Sion here in this section, is that, you know, he's just, you know, kind of bridled by this hatred and this pain that's basically keeping him alive. And, you know, we learn in this encounter that there's no way that we can ever really kill Darth Sion because by all accounts he's already dead, really. So really it's going to be up to us to, you know, kind of change the hearts and the minds of this character to have them be able to move on and become one with the Force. And, you know, Darth Sion has an interesting backstory, right? He was the disciple of Darth Traya, and then went on to make up, you know, kind of 1/3 of that Sith triumvirate with Nihilus and Traya before ultimately, you know, kind of joining forces there with Nihilus and casting Traya out of that triumvirate, which ultimately kind of leads to the demise, right? It makes it unbalanced and unsteady, and that is kind of the opening that Kreia can see and utilize Mitra Surik in taking to overcome the Sith there.
Yeah, that's the way of the Sith. They always murder and betray each other, and I guess that's why we kind of see that there's nothing there, you know, nothing living, really. Just kind of tombs and remnants and ghosts and an empty academy.
I mentioned kind of that famous line of Kreia, you know, saying apathy is death. That comes from this section, but another really great line comes from this section too, from Darth Sion. It's one of my favorites kind of in the game, and it really kind of encapsulates the tone of the game and you know what we're meant to kind of take away from all of this stuff. But Darth Sion says in our encounter, "Did you come here for answers? There are none. The call of Korriban is strong, but it is the call of the dead," which I think is really interesting because kind of throughout this whole game, you know, Mitra Surik, yourself as the one controlling the character, is really kind of searching for, you know, what's it going to take for, you know, Mitra Surik to ultimately get her atonement and things like that. And Sion saying, well, there's not anything that's going to give you that. All you have to look forward to is, you know, the calls of the death here from Korriban and, you know, the suffering that you'd cause through the galaxy. And I like kind of that, you know, just, you know, kind of couple of lines there that really kind of encapsulates what you're meant to take away from the game, I think, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of thoughts you can have, in response to KOTOR 2, but I think, no definitive answers, and KOTOR 2 definitely prompts a lot of thoughts, but there's not really like a black and white, like, here's what you're supposed to get from everything, you know? It's interesting because, like, no matter what you do with Kreia, it's like, yeah, I don't approve of that. You know, like, and it's like, but apathy's death, so you have to try, even though, like, I'm not gonna ever approve of you. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, what do you want, lady? And she'll never say, you know, but life doesn't really have, like, clear-cut answers sometimes, so it's interesting.
And yeah, you bring up the good point, right? As you face off against Kreia, and you try to resist engaging with her in combat, and she's like, "Well, you're going to, or you're not, because apathy is death." And what does that mean? The too long didn't read of all of that is that we were unable to defeat Darsion because he's already dead. So we leave, we get out of there. So that is that's kind of where the story bits end in Korriban, but there's a bunch of interesting kind of aspects of Korriban, and we talked about this location because we came here in the first Knights of the Old Republic. So when we were going through kind of our film adaptation for the first KOTOR, we talked at kind of length about Korriban and how we thought it should look, and how we thought you kind of play that out in a movie sense. But what about KOTOR 2, Cassia? Are there aspects of the way Korriban looks or feels now that you think are interesting, or other kind of side stories that we encounter here? It's a pretty short section. I think this might have come at the hands of getting the game out the door. But what do you think? Anything on Korriban that's really interesting and might be worth a revisit for us in the future?
In some ways, Korriban feels more present, like with it more empty, and maybe it says more about the dark side that way. I guess, like, if it were to be adapted into, even though my dream adaptation is a college textbook, it could, like, and in the textbook, it could be, like, you came, like, to be, it could be Shakespearean with all of the ghosts of your past, maybe even Dickensian, But if it were to be adapted, like, I would just, like, let it kind of, like, be silent and eerie, and because silence and eeriness kind of builds on, maybe not the paranoia the exile has, but, like, kind of the darker self-reflection after Dantooine.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is perfectly encapsulated by, kind of that stuff in the Chirac Cave, which we talked about a little bit, but you're basically facing all of the ghosts of your past, which is, in a way, very, very Dickensian in that nature. Like you said, we go through kind of this encounter with Malik recruiting us, Bastila, the Republic captain, Kreia, Darth Revan, kind of all of those. So you're literally just kind of going through the history of your own life with these ghosts and seeing the way that played out, and kind of the ultimate effects that your choices had. So I think that stuff is really interesting, and I think just kind of the location in general of Korriban is interesting because we'd seen it up in, I don't know, not necessarily like its height of power, but in the first KOTOR, by all accounts, everything's running as smoothly as something that's dedicated to keeping the dark side of the Force going. So what kind of happened to this place in that time is really interesting to me. And would there have been sort of grave robber types and things like we saw in Dantooine there, and what kind of aspects those might play into the story, how Master Lana Vosh got there in the first place, I think would be kind of an interesting aspect to explore as well when it comes to Korriban here in our second Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah. So we have seen Korriban. What world do we look forward to in our next travelogue? Is it Dantooine?
So we've kind of made our way through. Now there are a couple of places that we do go back and revisit. So maybe that is going to be the key for going on our next travel log. Maybe it is going to meet up with to have our ultimate head there with Darth Nihilus on his ship, which I'm totally drawing a blank on the name of it right now.
We'll just say it's the Ravager. So.
Yeah, the Ravager. It could be going to Malachor. It might be kind of a combination of all of those things. For sure, as we make our next travel log, maybe it's going to be like a loose end kind of travel log before we make our way to Malachor and ultimately kind of wrap up our little travel series. But before we go, we'd hinted on kind of some stuff a little bit, but I wanted to ask Cassia, as we go through these travel logs, we've been talking as Knights of the Old Republic is like this atonement and purgatory story. Are there any kind of themes or anything that stand out in addition to what we talked about in the Chirac Cave and meeting up with Darth Sion and stuff like that? Anything else stand out to you in that aspect?
Kind of paired with Dantooine, I kind of look at Dantooine as like positive self introspection for the exile, and then like kind of like Dantooine is like the darkness compared to Dantooine's light, so it's kind of like the dark self-reflection. So maybe an adaptation, whether it be a college textbook or a Disney Plus show, could like play on like what are some positive ways of looking back at the past, what are some negative ways of looking back at the past, like what does a person need to do to kind of move forward, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple of really good kind of touchstones here, I think, in Korriban. If you're looking at it in terms of like the levels of purgatory, I think that like the avarice level, avarice and greed, you can see that kind of in the fallen temples here. And you also have kind of the level of sloth, the atonement for being slothful, for being, lazy, on that level was never being able to stop, which is kind of this character of Darth Sion, and we're really kind of learning that about him in this section where he's literally just going to keep continuing, very much zombie-like as our Sith zombie lord there. So those were kind of two interesting things that I noticed, and then kind of one of the more kind of narrative plot points is that if you go through the Chirac Cave, if you do that kind of optional section when you finish your fight with Revan, you kind of emerge, from this tomb, almost like reborn again, kind of, emerging from the belly of this beast sort of thing. So I think that just from a storytelling aspect, I thought that was kind of interesting thing I wanted to make note of there, as we, kind of turn the page on Korriban, Cassia.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe we'll see Korriban again in the future, whether it be KOTOR 2 or something else.
Everyone at home listening, let us know what you think about Korriban, and let us know what you think about kind of the characters that we meet there, and what we've got going on there, and kind of what your favorite aspects of it were, or versus, Korriban, how we saw it in Knights of the Old Republic. So let us know all that stuff, and we hope that you're enjoying these journeys, and stay tuned. Like I said, we'll probably do some sort of like loose end where maybe we just kind of go and recap all of the locations a little bit, and anything we missed, or anything that kind of happens on a return visit there in the game. But I think that's going to put a pin in this travel log. Cassia, we are well on our way. We have, I guess we found our last Master Jedi. Unfortunately, we were a little too late in that sense, but that's okay. That's okay. Our story is going to carry on, and hopefully Mitra Surik will be able to seize the day, so to speak.
Yeah, and in the wise words of Master Yoda, may the Force be with you.